In the name of the Father, and the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. How come that Jesus is asking today from us to hate our parents? He makes it a condition. Unless a man hates his father and mother, his brothers and sisters, his children, and even his own self, cannot be his disciple. Wasn't the commandment very clear? Honor your father and mother. So how come Jesus today is asking us to hate them? All the church fathers, in commenting on this, they said it's a hyperbole. Hyperbole means exaggeration. Sometimes the Lord wants to say something very clear. What does it mean to hate? In a word, you can say it's a call to detach. So the word we're going to use today is detachment. What is detachment? It's separating oneself emotionally first, and maybe physically, from someone or something. When you say, I'm going to keep this aside, it's not going to be my focus or my close interest. When was the first time that God actually, or the commandment came to detach? Anybody knows when was the first time? The first time ever a call to detachment was given to humans. Think about it. Huh? Adam and Eve? Okay. Let me give you this first one. So you're all on the same page. It's in Genesis 2. After creating Eve, when Adam says, is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, she shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore, a man shall leave, detach, abandon his father and mother, and be joined to his wife. So the first call of detachment was from God as a rule that has to apply to all men when they about to get to the age of marriage. You need to abandon, leave, detach from your parents and be joined to your wife. Why is that? God knows a time will come, will be a conflict. It must happen. There will be a conflict in the mind of man or the woman, same way, between the interests of her parents and the interest of her husband, between the interests of his parents and the interests of his wife. Then, to avoid that conflict, what did God say? Leave your father and mother. Does that object or contradict honor your father and mother? No, it does not contradict. Continue to honor your father and mother, but don't be attached to them. Let's talk about this for a little bit. What is attachment? When you hear about attachment in medicine, those who studied obstetrics and pediatricians especially, they know about something called the time of bonding and attachment. The mother bonds with the baby in her womb when the baby starts to kick, when she feels the moves. You were around the 5th month. Then starts a bonding between the mother and the baby. The mother recognizes that she has a human being that belongs to her in her belly, and she starts to think about him or her. They start preparing for their name, for their clothes, and it's all ways of attachment. They say, I didn't try it, but I think it's true, that the father does not develop any attachment until the baby is born. So, what is meant from bonding and attachment? It's meant to cultivate, and listen to me, this is the church teaching. The family is meant as the right atmosphere for growing godly children. It's meant all for the baby. That baby should be taken care of the best way possible. Even the detachments of their parents from the grandparents is meant to bring the babies in an atmosphere of harmony, peace, love. The focus is now on the baby. It is natural and godly. Again, some people go to marriage and they say, I don't want to have any kids. That is nonsense. It's ungodly. Yes, you didn't get kids because you are barren or God did not give you kids. One thing, but to go into marriage not wanting to have kids, that's totally ungodly. This is selfish. Marriage is not meant for that. You're going to be crowned in marriage. Last night we had this. To be crowned to serve. It's not about you. Yes, you will get a side benefit of intimacy, of fulfillment, of emotional needs, but your focus should not be yourself. What's the point? What's the point? If this is the case, God would have not instituted marriage, which just created us like He created animals. Season of mating come, they come together, they feel the urge, they get done, and they each leave and go somewhere else. So bonding and attachment is the natural law of human family. For this to be perfectly happening, the man has to be all available to his wife. And the woman has to be all available to her husband. And both of them both available fully to their children. If this is going to be reduced in any way, it is not godly. So that's why the commandment says, detach, leave. Perfect, beautiful. But something bad happened. The evil one, the devil, who knows how to use the good against us, used the attachment that happened between Adam and Eve when he said, bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh, to turn it against them. When he took Eve alone and deceived Eve, and then through the attachment, Eve not deceived Adam, she did not deceive him. By the attachment between of them, she put pressure. There is a pressure there in the attachment. As any man, married man, will know to keep his wife happy, he has to listen, to give, to do. So Adam, out of pleasing his wife, because now he's attached to Eve, and he had this, I would say, a moment of problem, a moment of confusion. Should I listen to her or should I listen to God? But like peer pressure, he thought he's going to lose Eve, then he had to eat. So the devil used the attachment. So what happened? What happened? Immediately the relationship broke. You hear Adam saying, I didn't do it. The woman you give me, now she's not flesh of my flesh, bone of my bones. She is that stranger, that other being, the one I don't know anything about. She tricked me. So, what do you learn from this? Here's something, I'm going to move fast forward to Pope Carlos. And you can say, what's Pope Carlos to do with the attachment between Adam and Eve? I'll tell you. His teacher was, again, I keep repeating the stories from Pope Carlos. It's a very practical story. It happened in our times, maybe not the younger times. He was studying under the teacher. His teacher was Isaac of Syria from the 7th century. And he had quoted him many times saying this. Listen carefully. Detach from all and love all. He says to really love people, to really love them, You have not to be attached to them. Why? Because he says to an attachment, how is it explained? You're loving them on a human level, like a mother and child, a friend, another friend. But to detach, to be united with God, you will love them godly love. So what was Pope Carlos doing? I said this before and I'm going to say it again. Many of us, babyish thinking, to think, and this is something you be tempted to think, that Pope Carlos, when he was a young Azar, left his family because he didn't like to be around. In my class in the school, when I had them write about the reason why Azar, Yusuf, left his family and left the monks to be in a cave, they all said because he didn't want to be with people. Nonsense. Nonsense. That's not the reason. The reason why he wanted to be alone, so he can achieve what he called stillness of heart, does not get distracted, so that all his energy is given to developing a relationship with God. That's it. He's not going because he hates people. He says, I'm just being too much distracted. But then, when he developed this relationship with God, Isaac of Syrian says, he acquired hubba sabia. That's Aramaic for divine love. When he went back to the community, he was the most loving, sacrificial person you can imagine. He didn't care. What happens in natural attachment? Let me ask you. You get expectations. You expect certain things. You demand certain things. When the other person doesn't do it, what happens? We get disappointed and get angry. And we feel it inside of us. This, and you hear it this way. He should not do this. She should not do this. And you hear it between husband and wife. He should have done this, and there's a list of things that, expectations. Any human being goes into a relationship, goes into attachment, have a list of expectations. If they are not fulfilled, what happens? They get frustrated, drained, and eventually they get angry. I say this also about kids. At certain age, the kids growing up, they realize what their parents should be like, right? And then they don't see it. They expect them to be understanding. They expect them to be patient, kind, gentle, wait on them a little bit, and the parents sometimes, one way or another, they get frustrated and they yell. Here in America, yelling is a big thing. Egypt is beating. So, what does the child think? No, they are not godly parents, they're evil. I'm going to get as far as I can from them. Teenage come, they start running away from their parents, but they don't know. They're running on a circumference of a big circle. After a long time, what happens? They're coming back. But after they calm down and they understand clearly that their parents are human beings like them, they're not gods. And they lower their expectations. And they understand they themselves are going to be having the same weaknesses. And believe it or not, and there's Egyptian proverbs about this, the boy becomes exactly like his father who hated, and the girl becomes like her mother who she hated with all her passion. But why is all this? Because of attachment. We did not grow out of the baby attachment to our parents. To do this, we need to do that detachment. So, let me give you another story, or multiple stories actually. When God wanted to have someone to be his father, to be the one, actually the only one that takes care of him like Adam, he had done this many times. If you notice in the Old Testament, God is always practicing detachment for the people he chooses. How he did it with Abraham. He told him, get out of your country. What's country? Social structure. The the place I'm here. You notice all of us who came from Egypt understand there's a huge difference in culture between Egypt and here. For example, Egypt, lying is not a big thing. It's not a big deal. How about here? You lie, you're blacklisted. Sexual immorality in Egypt is picked on because of the Muslim tradition also, not just the Christian. Here, it's not a big deal. So there is a huge culture gap. But then what God said to Abraham, get out of this. Get out from that country. Second, get out of your family. Your immediate family members, your uncles and aunts and cousins. Get out of that, the people that you grow up with. Get out of your father's house, even his father. Why? To say to him in chapter 15, Abraham, do not be afraid. Listen to this. It's very interesting when Abraham did this. I am your shield, your greatly exceeding reward. Your exceedingly great reward. Sorry. Your exceedingly great reward. What does that mean? Like, I'm going to stand between you and danger. I'll defend you. It will come to me before it comes to you. How would God say that to anybody? Because Abraham said, I don't know my father. I'm leaving my country. I'm going to be with you, Lord. Third, Moses. For God to develop Moses into the person he needed him to be, he had to create the circumstances where Moses is taken from his mother and lives as a foreign boy in a palace of Egyptians that were picking on him. Moses developed stuttering because the kids in the palace most probably were actually picking on him all the time because he was not one of them. Joseph, he has to be taken from his father and his brothers and sent to Egypt as a slave. One of the best ones, Ruth. I love that story. Ruth got of her own country because she saw what her mother-in-law looked like and the family and the tradition of the Jewish tradition and their godliness. They were godly people in a place that's godless, doesn't know anything about God. So she got attracted to her, and Naomi, her mother-in-law, believe it or not, a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law relationship that makes Ruth come out of her country to go to another country and tell her what? Don't leave me here. I'm not going to leave you. Wherever you go, I'm going. Your people are my people. Your land is my land. And where you die, there I will be buried. Very powerful. For Ruth to found Boaz, the godly man who is going to be her husband. The church father looked at this and says, Ruth left her culture and her country and saw the church, Naomi, who led her to Jesus, Boaz, and that's how she became fruitful. She had no children. So, detachment. We do detachment, unfortunately, for different other reasons, and it's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong about that. People leave their parents to go have a study in a school somewhere else. And sometimes they leave their parents to go and marry or go and have a business or go and do, you all detached from Egyptian families to come here and be foreigners. You got detached, but not for God, for sure. That doesn't make it bad, but it's not really what Jesus is meaning here. To detach is not to depend on a parent to satisfy your needs, but you depend on Christ. You depend on Christ and the church to satisfy what you need, whether it is social or emotional or spiritual. And that's why Jesus said, whoever left a father and mother or sons or daughters or fields will have 100 more and will have eternal life. He's talking about the church. He's talking about being a community here. And that's why I think it's very beautiful to come in America here or any other culture, in other country outside of Egypt, and people find their relationships in the church. That's what Jesus intended to have. Detachment is needed temporarily for prayer. I think this is important to practice. When you're so much busy with your bills and your family, then you have to break a little bit and take a little time and pray. In that moment, you really need to detach, to shut down everything and say, I'm going to give myself to Him who called me out of the world. The problem of detachment on a social level are many, or attachment, I'm sorry. What are they? So fights within the family. Always remember, when you are fighting within your family member, the problem of that is attachment, your expectations. You're not thinking like Jesus. You're only thinking as a human, natural human being who lives in a human setting. It means I had not detached. I had not got out of this. That I did not say, so what Jesus is using is a very strong language. Hate. What does he mean? Hate here is to push against what I call love. What I call love is not love. It is attachment. That's the natural feeling toward relatives. What we should call love is Jesus, who left heaven, left his Father, to become human as a slave, and then left his mother, went up the cross, back to heaven. This is really the attachment and the detachment we should have. And then when you withdraw yourself from the people that you're in and say, I don't want anything from them, and you find a vacuum in your heart. And that vacuum is the place where Christ comes and lives. When somebody dies and it's snatched out of us, the relationship is torn, and the person feels it, feels the wound where the person has left. I always advise, if your husband or your father or children had left you and went to be with the Lord, this is the prime time to have a real connection with Christ. Otherwise, he's an add-on. My wagon is full, and the Lord has to be added on. I can give him a corner somewhere, but when somebody leaves my life, there is a vacuum, there is an emptiness, there is a place where it was occupied by someone so dear and so close. When that person leaves, there's a huge emptiness. And this is the prime time for you to learn how to pray, how to connect. This is extremely important, and keep that in mind. What does the monk do? They do it on purpose. They don't think that those who get to be monks and solitaries don't feel the relationship. They do, but they realized I need a much better relationship to be a much better person. So they sever themselves, they cut it, and they go to do that. Let us do that just through prayers when you come to the liturgy, when you are opening your Agbeya at home, and just stop thinking about the other people. Forget about them for a little bit. Push them away for a little bit. Because when you come back from prayer, guess what? You are a better husband, you're a better father, you're a better child, you're a better friend, you're a better in everything. So that's what St. Pope Gross used to say. Detach from all and love all. Let me say these words in Arabic. So النهارده بنقرا الانجيل بتاع ربنا يسوع المسيح لما بيكلمنا على إن لم يبغض الرجل أو الست أباه وأمه وأخوته وحتى نفسه لا يستطيع أن يكون لي تلميذا. سمانا الملح بتاع الأرض. يعني عايز تبقى الملح بتاع الأرض لازم تتعلم. يسموها في الأدب الرهباني التجرد. التجرد يعني إيه التجرد؟ إن الإنسان يخلع من جواه الارتباط العاطفي مع الناس اللي حواليه، يخلعه إراديا. مش مطلوب منا كلنا نخلعه بصفة دايمة، لكن مطلوب منا كلنا نخلعه بصفة مؤقتة عشان أعرف أصلي. لما يقول يبغض، اللي فسر الكتاب المقدس من الآباء قالوا البغض هنا مش معناه إنك تكره، إن في وصية مكتوب عنها بتقول إيه؟ أكرم أباك وأمك. هقبلهم إزاي هعملهم إزاي مع بعض؟ الإكرام للأب والأم لا يعني التعلق بيهم. أحيانا بنفهم الحاجات غلط. لما أجي نقول تحب قريبك كنفسك أو حبوا بعضكم بعضا كما أحببتكم أنا، الذهن يروح على طول يقول لك لازم أتكلم معاهم وأسأل عليهم كل يوم وأقعد أخد ودي معاهم. محدش قال كده. محدش قال كده خالص. في الدير كان ليا أب روحي في الدير كان يقول لي كده، يقول لي احنا في دير من الأديرة بنصلي البعض بحرارة وبدموع، لكن مفيش حد فينا بيتكلم مع التاني. ما بنتكلمش بعض، لكن بنحب بعض جدا. بالعكس احنا لما ما بنتكلمش بعض بنكمل نحب بعض. لو ما بنتكلم مع بعض يحصل ايه؟ بنتخانق مع بعض. البابا كرولوس قال الكلمة دي، قالها كان من مارس حق، قال الكلمة المفضلة بتاعته، قال لك حب الكل وايه؟ قال اكشولي هي ابعد عن الكل وحب الكل. هي الاول ابعد. الابعد دي معناها ازقهم شوية من قلبي، ولو مؤقتا. انا بتكلم ان احنا، لكن هم بالنسبة لهم هيعملوا كده دايما. ليه؟ قال مارس حق قال كده ان لما الانسان يبعد عن الكل، ودي غلطة في دماغ كل بني ادم يفكر في الرهبنة او يفكر في هروح ارتاح من الناس. دي فكرة شيطانية. ما حدش بيروح الدير عشان يرتاح من الناس. اللي بيروح الدير عشان ما يتشتتش بالمشاكل والمشاغل بتاعت العالم، يوفر قلبه لربنا، يوم قلبه يتملي بمحبة ربنا، يقدر يحب كل الناس كما أحبهم مين؟ المسيح. مش دي الوصية؟ تحبوا بعضكم بعضا كما أحببتكم أنا. مين فينا يقدر يعمل دي؟ اللي كرس نفسه لربنا. فإذا مش قادر أكرس التكريس الكلي، أعمل إيه؟ تكريس جزئي في أثناء الصلاة، في أثناء القداس، في أثناء التأمل. أخلع من دماغي كل الناس اللي أنا أعرفهم وكل الناس اللي مش متعلق بيهم واللي عندي مشاكل عنهم. عشان كده ما تدخلوش نفسكم في القصص دي جامد قوي، في حتة إن أنا أتعلق بحد جامد. حاربها، حط لها حدود، عشان بعد شوية اللي أنت بتحبه ده يطلع بره البيت ويتجوز، يروح يذاكر في حتة تانية. اللي متعلق بيه ده ممكن بعد الشر ربنا ياخده. طب وبعدين اللي حصل هذا، انا هقول لكم النصيحه اللي انا بقولها لكل الناس: لما حد يموت بيسيب لي فراغ، بيبقى فيه جرح، بيبقى فيه فراغ في قلبي. الناس اللي جربت دي عارفين ان لما الشخص بيروح السماء والانسان متعلق بيه قوي، جوه بيبقى فيه حته فاضيه، مكان كده فاضي، وفيه سكشن، فاكيوم. ايه ده؟ اقول لكم ده ايه؟ ده انسب وقت تحط ربنا يسوع المسيح. يقولوا كده عن سفر الاعمال في حته التجرد دي. سفر الاعمال فيه ايه غريبه قوي في النص، في الاول خالص لما ربنا صعد. لما صعد يسوع للسماء يتكتب عن الرسل ايه؟ اما هم فرجعوا فرحين من الجبل وذهبوا الى العليه. يعني ايه بقى ذهبوا فرحين؟ يعني دلوقتي هم قالوا لربنا يسوع المسيح باي، يعني هم مش هيشوفوه تاني. يذهبوا فرحين ازاي؟ تخيل انت كده، جدك ولا جدتك ولا ابوك ولا امك راح خد الطياره وسافر بلد مش هتشوفه تاني لمده فتره طويله جدا، ترجع فرحان؟ ده معناه ايه؟ معناه ايه ده؟ لانه حصل حاجه قويه جدا، ان ربنا يسوع المسيح هيديهم الروح القدس واداها لهم اوريدي وهم اتملوا. فالفراغ اللي عندهم ايه؟ الفراغ اللي عندهم مش فاضي، ملا. أول مرة يتقال حتة اترك أو سيب اتقالت فين؟ في سفر تكوين أصحاح 2، لما قال ربنا عن آدم: يترك الرجل أباه وأمه ويلتصق بامرأته. يترك أباه وأمه ويلتصق بامرأته. يعني إيه؟ عشان يلتصق الراجل بامرأته لازم يعمل إيه؟ يسيب أبوه وأمه. دي قانون إلهي. ليه؟ أنا هقول الكلام ده مهم جدا، ده تعليم الكنيسة. الزواج معمول لتربية أطفال. الزواج معمول لتربية أطفال. عشان البيت يربي الطفل كما يجب، يبقى لازم الأب والأم واحد كاملا وتاما. الراجل يدي نفسه بالكامل للست، والست تدي نفسها بالكامل للراجل في حالة انسجام، عشان نمثل الثالوث. في الثالوث الآب يعطي كل شيء لمين؟ للابن، والابن يرد على الاب ان يديله ايه؟ شفناها على الصليب، اداله روحه واداله جسده واداله دمه واداله وقته وكل حاجه. فعشان العطاء ده يبقى كامل، يبقى لازم الانسان ما يديش نفسه لحد تاني. فعشان كده لازم يترك الرجل ايه؟ في الجو ده هيتربى اولاد ربنا ويطلعوا زي صوره ربنا بالظبط. اول ما تبدا المشاكل بين الراجل والست في البيت، اقول لهم الحقوا، الشيطان حاطط عينيه عليكم. عايز ايه بقى منكم الشيطان؟ تفتكروا عايز ايه الشيطان؟ عايز العيال. عايز العيال. الشيطان مش عبيط. اوعى تفتكروا ان الشيطان عبيط عايزكم تتخانقوا مع بعض، ولا يفرق معاه. هو بس بيقلب الجو اللي ربنا قال عليه عشان نعمل ايه؟ عشان نضيع. عارفين زي بالظبط الذئب. كان في برنامج اسمه ذا ايرث بتاع واحده من الشركات بتاعت التلفزيون، نسيت اسم. اول بدا البرنامج بيصوروا قطيع من الكاريبو زي الغزلان كده في الشمال، والذئاب بتجري وراهم. الذئب عارف انه مش ممكن هيقدر يلحق الكاريبو، هم اسرع منه، بس هو عايز الصغير. فيعمل ايه؟ يضغط على القطيع كله الكبار ويخليهم يجروا باقصى سرعه، ويفضل يجري، هو مش هيلحقهم ولا هيجيبهم، لغايه لما واحد من الكبار يتعب ويفرط في ايه؟ في الصغير. ما هو اصلا لازم تفضل جنبه الام او الاب علشان ما يتاكلش، لغايه لما الكبير ده يتعب من الجري ويضطر يقول لك بقى روح ما بعدك روح، ويسيب الايه؟ الصغير. فدي كانت متصوره ازاي الصغير وقع من الام لانها تعبت وجريت وسابته، فقام الذئب اخده. هو ده. فالجو بتاع البيت هو مطلوب ديتاتشمنت، مطلوب ان احنا نبعد عن الاب والام عشان خاطر يبقى عندي الامكانيه والوقت والذهن ان انا اعمل ايه؟ احب مراتي واحب زوجي واربي الايه؟ العيال في الجو ده. هو ده الجو اللي معمول لتربيه العيال على صوره الله. يبقى اول واحده اللي هي في سفر التكوين، لذلك يترك الرجل اباه وامه يلتصق بامراته ويكون جسد واحد. الشيطان جه وعمل ايه؟ استغل دي. خد حواء لوحدها، القديس يوحنا ذهبي الفم يقول لنا كده، خدها لوحدها الصفرة دي واداها الايه؟ السم، واستغل العلاقه اللي ربنا كان عاملها ليهم، استغلها انها تضغط على مين؟ على ادم. وقعوا عن طريق الاتاتشمنت ده، عن طريق التعلق ده. فاصبح السيستم الطبيعي اللي ربنا عامله وقع. جه ربنا يسوع المسيح في العهد الجديد قال هنعمل حاجه جديده، هيعمل حاجه جديده عشان يشدنا ككنيسه. احنا بقينا العروسه. فقال لازم الانسان يترك اباه وامه ومراته كمان وكل الناس دي عشان يتعلق بيا. طب هتعمل بينا ايه يا رب يسوع لما نسيب كل عشانك؟ قال لك هخليكوا ناس احسن، هتبقوا ملح الارض. لما ترجع تتعامل مع الناس دي مش هترجع معاها تتعامل معاهم بانانيه. على فكره احنا بنضحك على نفسينا. قال لك انا بحب، يعني ايه المشكله يا ابونا؟ بحب ابويا وامي، بحب مراتي بجد، ولا ده تعلق؟ على فكره في الطب يقول لك كده، عشان العيل يتربى، الام وهي لسه حامل فيه في الشهر السادس وبتبتدي تحس العيل بيرفص، يسموها دي ايه؟ بوندنج واتاتشمنت. انا ما اعرفش بالعربي الترجم ازاي. اتاتشمنت تعلق، ارتباط، صح، ارتباط وتعلق. ان الام ترتبط بالجنين عشان تاخد بالها منه، عشان تهتم بيه، تصحى له بالليل يبقى حته منها، فهي بتتعلق بيه عشان خدمته. لو القصه دي باظت، الام ما تهتمش بالعيل. يجي بقى بعد كده الواحد لما يكبر، العيل يكبر بقى وياكل بنفسه ويروح بنفسه ويجي بنفسه ويسوق ويروح يعمل حاجات. لو فضل هذا التعلق موجود ايه اللي هيحصل؟ يقول لك انا بحب امي او بحب ابويا، وهو في الحقيقه ايه؟ بيحب نفسه، لأن أمه وأبوه بيعملوا له إيه؟ اللي هو عايزوه، بيخدموه، بيقبلوه، بيستحملوه، ماشي؟ والعيل هو ده المستقبل بتاعنا، ده فخرنا، ده. ففيها حتة أنانية، حتة التعلق والارتباط دي. المفروض إنها بتأدي وقت غلطها في وقت معين بتروح. كده العيل يتجوز بنسيبه، ما بنلزقش فيه. بيروح يتعلم بنسيبه. بيروح يعمل بيزنس في مكان تاني، بيهاجر بنسيبه. ماشي؟ طب الاهداف دي كلها ما تجيش حاجه جنب الانسان يتعلق بربنا. وبابا كرولوس في القصه بتاعه ماري اسحاق قال كده، قال ان ماري اسحاق بيقول لما تيجي تقطع التعلق ده قلبك بيبقى جاهز ترتبط بربنا، لان ما عندكش حاجه تشتتك. اكتر حاجه تشتتنا العاطفه، عاطفه تشتتنا جدا. فلما اتعلق بربنا ايه اللي يحصل؟ بتغير. يبقى عندي، هو سماها في الارامي يسموها حب سابيه، اللي هي الحب الالهي. يعني الحب الالهي ده ان الانسان يحب زي يسوع، ما يطلبش حاجه من نفسه. عشان كده لما نصلح العلاقات الاسريه ازاي؟ نتعلق بربنا. اصلح علاقاتي ازاي بالاسريه؟ اصلح علاقتي ازاي مع بنت مرات ابني، ولا مع ام جوزي، او مع ام طبعا ام الجوز هي اصعب من ام الزوجه. يعني ام الزوجه تعتبر الولد ابنها، ام الزوج تعتبر البنت ايه؟ مش ضرتها، صح. بس دي محتاجه ان الانسان يرتبط بربنا حتى لو في وقت الصلاه. حتى في وقت الصلاه نقطع اللي موجود ونقول ايه؟ نقول ده وقت بتاع ربنا، لا هفكر في حد ولا عايز اشتاق لحد ولا عايز حد يشتاق ليا، ومش هعمل حاجه غير بس ان افضي قلبي. مش سهله بس لازم تتعمل، لازم تتعمل. يسموها في الرهبنه التجرد، انسان يتجرد يخلع. مش لازم يتعمل طول الحياه، بس في الوقت اللي احنا هنصلي فيه. لما ترجع من الصلاه وانت كرست القلب ده وكرست الوقت ده لربنا، انت زوج احسن، حما احسن، كنا احسن، ابن احسن، لان هو ده اللي يقدر يصلحنا. تعلقنا ببعض لو انا مش واخد بالي مش هيصلحنا، هيخلينا نتغاظ. اخر حاجه اقولها لكم، لما العيال بيتضايقوا منا كاهل، بيتضايقوا لان عندهم توقعات. كلنا عندنا توقعات، كل واحد فينا في علاقاته حاطط قدامه صوره مثاليه للي هيعمله التاني. ابويا، امي، جوزي، مراتي، ولادي، لازم يتصرف بالطريقه دي. لما ما يتصرفوش بالطريقه دي بعمل ايه؟ بحزن وبتضايق وبغضب وببتدي بقى ابقى اتمرد. ولما تعرفوا ان في التين ايج، لما العيل يوصل التين ايج، المثاليه، حته المثاليه، ان ابويا لازم يعمل كده، لازم يبقى صبور معايا، لازم يفهمني حتى لو انا ما اتكلمتش، لازم يديني اللي انا محتاجه واللي انا ما اعرفوش حتى. ده ابويا ده حاجه كبيره قوي، وامي هكذا. طب وبعدين لو ما عملوش؟ لا، دول ناس اشرار بقى. بيبقى عندنا ايه يسموها الابيض والاسود. لو ما عملوش المتوقع منهم يبقوا ايه؟ شياطين، اشطب عليهم ولازم اجري منهم. فيقول لك يبتدي يجري، هو مش عارف انه بيجري في دايره هيلف وايه ويرجع، بس هتاخد منه وقت. فاحنا محتاجين ان احنا نتعلم القصه دي. لما يقول ربنا النهارده لم يبغض الرجل اباه وامه حتى نفسه، معناها ايه؟ في حساب، في قصه هتحصل. كل ما نتقدم في علاقتنا بربنا كل ما هنتعلم اكتر ازاي مهم جدا ان احنا ناخد الطريق الصعب ده، طريق التجرد. هنا التجرد من العلاقات البشريه او العاطفيه، حتى ولو لوقت مؤقت. هتقول يا ابونا انت عايزنا كلنا نترهبن؟ لا، انا مش بقول تترهبنوا، كرس وقت ربنا. سيبك بقى من الفيسبوك، سيبك من التفكير ولا القعده في التفكير مين اللي عمل فيك ايه ومين اللي ما عملش فيك ايه، وازاي ننتقم وازاي نعدل الدنيا وازاي نصلح، وانا وحش ولا انا كويس. كل الكلام ده ولا هيودي ولا هيجيب. هتقعد تلف في دوائر لغايه لما تعرف ان ملهاش مخرج غير انك تطلع من الدايره دي وتبص لربنا وتقول يا رب انا بتاعك النهارده عشان ابقى ملح، عشان ابقى زيك، مش هينفع من غيرك. اخر كلمه هقولها لكم بالعربي، اللي يظن ان يبقى جدع مع ربنا غلطان. احنا ما نعرفش نبقى جدعان مع ربنا، هو اللي بيدينا الجدعنه. فلو مش هروح له مهما عملت مع نفسي مش هتوصل لحاجه. هتاخد قد ايه وقت لغايه لما تتعلم دي؟ مش عارف. لإلهنا كل المجد، الآب والابن والروح القدس الآن وكل أوان.